Good evening, dear students. Today we'll discuss physiology of blood pressure under the background of hemodynamics, which we have discussed in the last two lectures. So we have seen that in hemodynamics, the basic pump, the heart which is pumping the blood to systemic circulation from the left side, that is from here, it is going to systemic circulation. So heart, aorta, arteries, arterioles, we have seen that these are the basically site of resistance, which consist of arteries and arterioles having smooth muscle under the control of sympathetic stimulation. They undergo constriction. Then this part, which is the venous side, it can accommodate a large amount of blood without much rise in pressure. That's why these are called as capacitance vessel. And blood returns back to the heart by superior and inferior vena cava, and the circulation continues. So this is the systemic circulation, and this is the pulmonary circulation, which is a lesser circulation. Now, if you just recall, blood itself will not have any pressure, but it is being pumped by heart, and after that, once it is in the circulation, the resistance decides the pressure. So the flow will depend on the pressure difference across the vessel. More the pressure difference, more is the blood flow. And now this blood which is in the arteries will divide to form the capillaries, which reunite to form the veins. So ultimately main transfer of oxygen and nutrient takes place at the capillary level. So this pressure is generated in the blood vessel, and as the capillary, you can see last time we have mentioned they are having the biggest surface area, but being small capillaries, they are having less amount of pressure, less tension, that we have discussed. So considering all that, laminar flow, Laplace's law and Poisson's law. So now let's proceed to the further part. Again, just to revise our cardiac cycle, especially the left side of the heart. During ventricular systole and diastole, there are changes in pressure in the ventricle. You can see at the beginning of ventricular systole, pressure in the left ventricle is almost zero, but as the ventricle contracts during isovolumetric contraction period, pressure rises to near about 100, and as ventricle further contracts, the pressure peaks to around 120 millimeters of mercury at the peak of systole. Then during isovolumetric relaxation phase, pressure again falls back, which is about 0 during the diastole. So this is the left ventricular pressure changes during cardiac cycle. In parallel with the water will have almost same pressure, but at the end of diastole, the pressure in the vessels is never 0 due to presence of elasticity in the blood vessel. The pressure is around 80 to 90 millimeters of mercury, and during systole it matches with the ventricle, so it is around 120 millimeters of mercury. During diastole, again it is coming back to around 80 or 90 millimeters of mercury. So this is the aortic pressure changes, and here you can see across the different vessels in the vascular system, the pressure goes on decreasing as there is a change in diameter of the blood vessel, as well as the tension of the blood vessel, as well as the area of the blood vessel. So here you can see the pressure in the aorta, if it is 120, it is systematically decreasing down. In the capillaries, it is almost 10 to 15 millimeters of mercury only, and the veins and vena cava, so it is quite low. Now, after knowing this biophysical principle involved in the blood pressure, we will now concentrate on the pressure recording and maintenance of pressure, how the pressure is recorded and how it is regulated in a day-to-day life. Now experimentally we can find the pressure in the arteries by keeping a cannula directly inside the artery like this. So this will be facing towards the blood, so this will be recording directly the central pressure exerted on the blood. So this pressure is recorded by the cannula attached to any artery in the dog, which is attached to the mercury flowing cannula. So now from here we can record using mercury, and through a graph recording is done. So this was done experimentally, but nowadays experiments are banned. Just for understanding the mechanism we are using this phenomena. But when you record this blood pressure by this cannula, we will be recording a central pressure. But in human or live human beings it is not possible, so we are recording this pressure. So you can see this is the pumping of blood. So when you keep a cannula here, so it will be central pressure, but we are not keeping cannula. What we are doing is basically we are applying the cuff and we'll try to measure the pressure. So this will be blood vessel will dilate and constrict back. So we'll see now in the further. So basically the pressure now we are recording is the lateral pressure. Lateral pressure exerted on the wall of the vessel when blood is moving. Central pressure will be when we are keeping cannula in the vessel, but when we record the pressure on the side, it is a lateral pressure. So here now you can see this is the blood vessel. So we are applying the cuff on the sides like this, and we compress it, and we will see how much is the amount of pressure required to obliterate it, and after that how much pressure will be required to open it. So basically this is the lateral pressure, means wave of lateral waves will be like this in the artery. So there is a rise in pressure here, there is a fall in pressure here. Okay, so like this. So in this here you can see this is our axillary artery. Now later here it becomes a brachial artery, continues as the radial artery. The same artery is the moving from here. So on the brachial artery we are keeping tying the cuff from all sides. We are tying the cuff like this. Okay, so initially obviously the blood vessel is totally open. Now as we pump this, there will be a rise in pressure in this cuff. So it will try to press on the arm. It will press the arm. So when it presses, what happens? See, we are inflating the cuff. Brachial artery will be obliterated. So you can see when the pressure is high, you will see the blood vessel like this collapse. So no sound will be there as there is no blood flow. So artery is closed, no sound will be there. Now gradually we will deflate this cuff by this wall is there. This wall is open and the pressure is deflated. So when we deflate gradually, what will happen? This cuff will get open. So slowly what will happen? At some moment the blood flow starts. So the moment blood flow starts, you will get some sound. Okay. So now this sound which matches with the pressure in the manometer, that we label as systolic blood pressure, because it is a pressure at which the vessels are started to open. Okay, now we'll further deflate it. At the end, when the vessel is fully open, again we will not have any sound. So the moment the sound disappears, that pressure we label as diastolic pressure. So like this, we are obliterating the artery, blood flow totally stops. At this moment blood flow will be stopped. Gradually sound will not be there. Gradually we will deflate the pressure. So a moment will come when vessel is just open and blood start to come. If you recall Reynolds number, you will find that there is turbulence is produced because of the vessel narrowing. So you will get a sound there. So that is, so moment the sound appears, it is systolic blood pressure. And after that, and during this phase also you will have different types of sound as the vessel is partially constricted in this period. But when vessel is fully open, again you will not get any sound as the lamellar flow is maintained. So in between this, so this is the top is the systolic pressure, and where the sound disappears is the diastolic blood pressure. So pressure in the aorta and other large arteries, peak value during each cardiac cycle is about 120 millimeters of mercury. So it is highest pressure during systole is called as systolic blood pressure, and the pressure falls during diastole. So minimum pressure during diastole is called as the diastolic blood pressure. It is around 70 millimeters of mercury, conventionally written as 120 by 70 millimeters of mercury. Always we mention systolic first and the diastolic. So when we see the pressure is 140 by 70 or 150 by 100, so first figure is the systolic and second figure is the diastolic blood pressure. So now again, through the principle of Reynolds number, we are able to measure blood pressure by mercury manometer. When we are narrowing the blood vessel, due to narrowing of the blood vessel, velocity rises and there is a sound. Now this sound which we are hearing is called as Korotkov sound, because it was discovered first by the scientist Korotkov. Difference between systolic and diastolic blood pressure is called as the pulse pressure. It is normally around 50 millimeters of mercury. Average pressure during cardiac cycle is called as the mean arterial blood pressure. It is average pressure during the cardiac cycle. There is a mathematical summation to find out. We'll learn it later on. Now, as we know that blood pressure is there, so how it is regulated? So this is important, how there is a regulation of blood pressure. So we are having two mechanisms. First is a rapid control of arterial blood pressure. For example, I am sitting down, suddenly I stand. When I stand, because of gravity, blood flow to the brain will be decreased. So there should be increase in blood pressure again back. So within seconds there has to be a decrease in blood pressure. Second is there is a long-term regulation of blood pressure. Suppose there is a blood loss or there is decrease in RBC production, whatever reason is there, there has to be maintenance on long term also. So two mechanisms are there. One is the short term or rapid control mechanism, other is a long term arterial regulation mechanism. Short term is basically by nervous system, by nerves, and long term is by hormonal mechanisms. Today we learn first regarding the nervous mechanism, how it is regulated through nerves. So in that again we are having three mechanisms for the nervous. One is a baroreceptor. Baro means pressure. So they sense the change in pressure. That's why these are called as baroreceptor. Other are CNS ischemic response. It is an emergency operation comes when a patient is having a severe ischemia. It is also called as last digit response. And third is chemoreceptor, that is sensitive to the chemistry of blood, especially the oxygen and CO2 level of the blood is assessed by this receptor. So these three mechanisms are regulating short-term mechanisms. They are working through the nervous system. Now for this innervation again we recall same vasomotor center. From here the vagus nerve is supplying, and as well as sympathetic nerve is arising. So same we have learned in the previous during our discussion of regulation of heart rate. So sympathetic and parasympathetic both are supplying the heart, but blood vessels are having dominant only the sympathetic innervation. So vasomotor tone is adjusted and the blood vessel, we don't have a vagus supply much, so the tone will increase and decrease. So when tone increase there is a vasoconstriction, tone decrease there is a vasodilatation. So innervation blood vessel, all blood vessels except capillaries are, and venules contain smooth muscles. So they will receive sympathetic stimulation. So venoconstriction decreases in the venous capacity and increases the venous return. Shifting of blood to the arterial side of the circulation takes place if there is a venoconstriction. Now sympathetic noradrenergic fiber mediate vasoconstriction. Vasoconstricted fiber have some tonic activity. When the sympathetic nerves are cut, sympathectomy, that is blood vessels dilate. Now just we'll have a brief anatomy of baroreceptor. So these are located mainly in the carotid sinus and aorta, that is aortic arch. So from carotid sinus the neural impulse is carried by the glossopharyngeal nerve, and from aorta vagus nerve, see these are the afferent nerves. So these are also called as Heyring's nerve. This glossopharyngeal also called as Heyring's nerve. Now as well as carotid bodies are located, which are the chemoreceptor basically, and aortic bodies. Both impulses are carried by the same nerves. Okay. Now the functional organization of baroreceptor, if you recall, we have learned during our regulation of heart rate. Ultimately the output is coming from the RVLM. If you recall, it is a sympathetic output which is excitatory output, and it is being controlled by this CVLM and NTS, that is nucleus tractus solitarius. Now from carotid sinus, there are receptors are there in the wall of carotid sinus. These are the sensitive to stretch. Change in this, whenever the blood pressure rises, they are stretched. Blood pressure decreases, they are not stretched. So these are the stretch receptor present in the wall of carotid sinus as well as aortic arch, that is vagus and glossopharyngeal nerve. Here these are excitatory, glutamate is released, and at RVL, this CVLM also glutamate is released. But now from here the neurons are releasing there is GABA, so these are inhibited. Okay, and output from here is excitatory. Okay, so the CVLM is inhibiting RVLM. So here the excitation, that is by glutamate, sympathetic stimulation. Okay, now if there is a rise in blood pressure, what will happen? See, there will be impulses going from the both of this to the NTS. They will excite it. Now NTS will excite the CVLM, that is caudoventromedial medulla. Now this will inhibit RVLM. So RVLM output is normally positive. That means if it is inhibited, it's a brake on this excitation. So this will lead to brake. So there is a decrease in heart rate as well as blood pressure. Okay, so that is a routine mechanism. Now what is the role of baroreflex? See what happens now. Under normal conditions, suppose blood pressure is 100 millimeters of mercury. So for this, suppose 4 impulses are going. I'm just giving example, just I'm using the word 4. Okay, 4 impulses are going. Under normal condition, blood pressure is 100. Now if blood pressure rises, this will be 10 impulse will be going. If further rise, 12 impulse will go. If further rise, 14 impulse will go. Means when blood pressure is rising, number of impulse goes on increasing. Okay, and this will decrease the heart rate as well as blood pressure. Now on the contrary, if the blood pressure falls from 100 to 90, what will happen? Number of impulse will reduce now. 8 impulses, 6 impulses, 4 impulses. So that means number of impulse will increase when blood pressure rises, and when blood pressure falls, number of impulse will fall. Number of impulse fall means less impulse will go from the carotid sinus to this. That means the brake ultimately will reduce. So excitation will be unopposed. So what will happen if less number of impulses are going from here? There will be increase in blood pressure and there will be increase in the heart rate. So they are working in both. When pressure rises, they are stretched. When pressure falls, they are not stretched. Not stretched means less amount of impulse will go from the baroreceptor. So in this diagram, you can have a clear idea. So this is the pressure in the aorta during systole and diastole. Now this is the mean arterial pressure which I have mentioned. So see, at the 100, there will be during systole some impulses are there, and the diastole almost impulses are 0. You can see in this phase there is no impulses. So here pressure is rising, pressure is falling here. Now when the pressure is 125, you can see number of impulses increased now. Okay, as the pressure is more impulses are going from baroreceptor. Blood pressure further increase, continuous impulses are going, so they will counter the blood pressure. On the contrary, now when this pressure is 75, you can see number of impulses are reduced from carotid baroreceptor. If pressure 50, further reduced. So like this, they are working in both when pressure rises as well as pressure falls. That's why there is called as buffer nerve. They're working in both conditions. When blood pressure rises, they will work. When blood pressure falls, they work in reverse way to increase the blood pressure. So the baroreceptors are working in both conditions. When blood pressure rises, they work. When blood pressure falls, they will lead to increase in blood pressure. So like this you can see, this is the pressure. When the pressure rises, you can see number of impulses are increasing. Okay, so they are working in both conditions. So stretch receptor in the walls of blood vessels, carotid sinus and aortic arch, glossopharyngeal nerve from carotid sinus and vagus nerve from the aortic depressor nerve, stimulated by a distension of structures in which they are located. They discharge at an increased rate when the pressure in the structure rises. And in hypertension, what happens? In hypertension, they are reset at higher level. Okay, because pressure is continuously high. So in this condition, they will not work because baroreceptors are working basically as short-term mechanism, but when pressure is raised continuously, they will reset at higher level. So a hypertensive patient at 180, they may adjust the pressure on that, but they will not bring it back to the normal. So because baroreceptor system opposes either rise or decrease in arterial pressure, they are called as pressure buffer system. So these are also called as buffer now. So in this way, baroreceptors are regulating blood pressure in a short-term mechanism. So here we complete the first part of regulation of blood pressure, that is a baroreceptor. In the next lecture, we'll learn regarding chemoreceptor, CNS response and the long-term regulatory mechanisms. Thank you.